Welcome to the Long Hair Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler O'Brien, and this is a business spotlight. Each month this year, I'm interviewing individuals who own, run, or work in remarkable businesses in Washington and California. Businesses that operate in unique areas or are disruptive within their industry. If you or someone you know has a business that deserves a spotlight, go follow @longhair.lawyer on your favorite social media and shoot me a message. I'm here today with Dr. Dru Lopez, owner of Summit Chiropractic and Sports Institute in Spokane Valley, Washington. Summit Chiropractic provides a broad range of services ranging from standard chiropractic care all the way to high altitude training, which we'll talk about today. When you come to their clinic, you get an experience, not just a visit. They treat all of their patients like elite athletes because they believe you don't have to be an athlete to be treated like one. Dr. Lopez himself has more certifications, skills, and accolades than we have time to cover, but we will spend a little time talking about the fact that he was recently appointed as the team chiropractor for USA Track and Field for the 2024 Paris Olympics. And I know we've got a lot to cover, but I think it makes sense to start in the beginning, and that's what got you into chiropractic?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's interesting, man. Like, I mean, I always knew like I wanted to go into some kind of a medical background, right? Like a medical profession. But yeah, I went on a church mission for a couple of years, came back, so I had some time off and from school, came back, and then I was like, all right, well, I got to get back and get my basic sciences, get my pre-med. Well, I went in for my first quarter because I was in a community college, and when I went in there, I took a biology class and general classes, and I got a D, man, on my biology class, and I was like, wow, okay. I don't know if I just been out of the game for a while, but like I felt like at that moment, like maybe the medical side wasn't for me, right? And so then what I did, I just started taking general classes and kind of pushed the medical side out of my brain just because I didn't think I was smart enough, So I actually ended up dropping that class. And so then I went back and then I said, okay, well, maybe I'll just do psychology, and just to kind of do something, get some kind of a degree. And so as I went and I talked to my advisor, they're like, all right, well, the first class you got to take is a biology class. And I'm like, damn it. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not doing sports psychology either. I was, or psychology. And so I kind of just took more regular generals and actually dropped out of college, man. And then started a cleaning business. And then I did that with my brother for about 4 years. Actually, it was close to 5 years. And I'm like, dude, how can I turned this like cleaning business into a multi-million-dollar business. Why can't I pass a biology class, right? But it took me like 5 years, right, from that moment. And so then I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to take a class. And so I, as I was working and I had that business, I took a biology course online, and I got an A. And I was like, all right. So then it took a little bit, and I just knew I needed to go back. Like deep inside, I knew I had to go back to school. And so after I did that, after I passed that class, I figured I would look into more about, okay, what I would need to do to be a medical doctor or a physical therapist. Chiropractic wasn't even in my radar, actually. I was looking more of a general doctor, sports doctor, or a PT. So I went and I job shadowed our family doctor. And one of the things that he said was like, hey, don't go in to be an MD. And I said, okay, well, that's weird. You're my doctor and you're telling me not to. So I said, well, why? And he said, it just doesn't pay well. And basically talked me out of it, which was kind of interesting, right? Normally, if somebody comes to me to kind of shadow, I'd be like, dude, I love chiro. This is awesome. But it was just the opposite. So I didn't know any different. I was young, and I said, okay, well, I guess I'm not doing that. And so I just took his word for it. And then I went and I shadowed a PT because that was the second option I wanted to do. and he was a sports PT. And so I went in and there was a whole bunch of geriatric patients. And I'm like, dude, I thought you were a sports PT. And he's like, yeah, man, like we are. But as a PT, we like with Medicare or post op, you have to work on them one on one. So your assistants, your PTAs, they get to do a lot of the one on ones with a lot of the athletes, because your job has to be focused more on them. At least that's what he did, right? I'm not speaking for every PT, but at least with him, that's what he had said. And so I said, well, maybe this isn't for me. So I kind of just put a hold on stuff. And then we were at church one day and playing church basketball. And then a guy got hurt. Like he got pushed from behind and he hurt his back. And then one of the guys that was playing there was like, hey, I'm a chiropractor. I can help you with that. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know what a chiropractor was. And then I was like, well, what do you do? He's like, oh, I'm a specialist. I work on the back and, work with some athletes too. So we're able to do the exercises and we're able to also work on the muscle and the joint. So I was like, okay, so you can do exercises and you're a doctor. It's like, that's the best of both worlds, right? And honestly, that's what spiked my interest. And then I started looking into it. So from that moment when I kind of knew I wanted to go back to school, it probably was 6 months while I had applied. I had enough credits that I had, then and then our chiropractic school that I looked into had an undergrad program. And so from the moment I realized I wanted to go into chiro, 6 months later, I was in Texas, bro, like in school,
Yeah.
signed up undergrad program and ready to roll. So it was very quick, man. Once I knew that's what I wanted, everything just lined up perfectly, man. And that it just became like a very clear road of where I needed to be.
That's just awesome, man.
Yeah,
And how, it sounds like you always had an interest in sports, like sports
100%.
focused medicine. Where does that come from?
I mean, I just honestly, man, like I've always played sports since I was little. I mean, I was a soccer guy. That's all I did. I actually didn't do multiple sports. I was just straight soccer. I'm from Mexico, dude. I'm an immigrant from Mexico. So if you don't play soccer, you get disowned. So like so ever since I was little, 5 years old, man, I've just been playing soccer. And so I just love it. I love the atmosphere. I love the energy that comes from sports. I knew I didn't want to do pain management, type of care. So I wanted to do more active care
Mm.
practice. So I knew if I went the sports route, I was going to focus on that niche, right? Like more active individuals, more athletes that want to get better, that want to put in the work. And so that's kind of what guided me more towards that. But really, the reality was more I'm an active person. I love energy. I love dynamics. I love yeah, just like a high energy. So that's why I kind of gravitated more towards the sports side.
Yeah. Wow. And how long was it after you graduated and you became a chiropractor that you decided to go out on your own? Like, was there a substantial period of time where you were thinking, I'm gonna operate under that regular partnership model? There's gonna be somebody that's got their last name on this little chiropractic firm, and I'm just gonna stay there for 5 years, or what was your thought process like with that?
Yeah, so I mean, ever since I was little, man, my family we owned businesses even when we were in Mexico, and I had my own business right prior to chiropractic school for
Hmm.
5 years, and so I knew I wanted to have my own practice, right? And so, but I didn't know the business side of that, right? It's totally different, and so I wanted to go work for somebody and get experience and just try to learn as much as I could, right?
Hmm.
And so that's one of the reasons why I came to Spokane because I was living in Texas at the time, right? So looking at all my options, I had job offers in Arizona, Colorado, Texas, and Washington. So I chose this one because I felt like that was going to give me the most experience on the sports side. So I even took a pay cut, to come here. But in my mind, I knew that eventually I was going to do my own thing. You know what I mean? So I needed to get the best experience possible, so that's why we moved to Spokane. And so for me, I worked under that doctor for 2 years just to learn as much as I could. He was awesome. He was great. He mentored me. He guided me through everything and taught me the ropes. Learned a lot from the treating component of things, right? The clinical skills and a little bit of the business. I didn't get that much of that from that practice, but just a general understanding of kind of the medical side was going to be like and owning a business. And yeah, we just took on that leap of faith. There was a doctor who was going to retire, and once I knew my contract was almost over, because I actually thought about partnering up with the other doctor as well, and he wanted to partner with me, and like kind of we were saying earlier, like I, just looking at all the pros and cons, I just felt like, okay, this would be my own thing. I don't have to share it with somebody else on my
Yeah.
vision, right? Or kind of where I see where I want to be. And so I just felt like, given that awesome opportunity that I had this doctor, retiring, I was going to have a patient base already. I wasn't going to start from scratch. And there were some systems already in place, and patients. And so it just made the most sense for me to kind of move away. Has it been easy? Heck no. Has it been hard? Yes. And I made a lot of mistakes, kind of in that process. But just learn from them. I'm still learning, right? But I knew that eventually I wanted to have my own, and yeah, and here we are, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, have my own practice.
Yeah. What was the biggest challenge early on? And maybe compare that to like what's kind of the biggest challenge now that you're on top of the world and have it all figured out, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I wish, man. Nah, I mean, like, I think the hardest part transitioning from where I was at to having my own practice. I mean, it was a big change, right? Like, I,
Yeah.
I would say probably the billing was the toughest part, right? The billing component of things, learning a new medical record system, because we had to transition that. Managing employees, right? Keeping track of overseeing their things, right? And I think that was probably the hardest because I didn't have the billing knowledge, right? And so how am I going to go ahead and check on somebody when I don't even know what the heck they were doing back there, right? I was
Yeah.
just hoping that they were doing the right thing. And I think like that was probably my biggest mistake from the beginning. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, the hard way. And so, and I would say now, and there was a lot of other things even then, that I mean, if anything could have gone wrong, it went wrong, like in the first year, right? All the way from, learning a new system to when I bought out that doctor, I bought the ARs out, meaning that all the people were the collections and the checks that were coming in from insurance, we bought that. So at least it was bringing cash flow in, right? To keep things
Hmm.
moving. Well, the problem was that when they moved to Vegas, and then they made an address change. So I had no idea that they had done that. So we weren't getting any checks. So it was like, where's the money? Where's the money coming in? Like, I'm barely starting to see patients. It takes about 30 to 90 days to get payment on a insurance. And I had the bank gave me some working capital, but that working capital started doing this really quickly because we weren't getting those checks. And so then there was a point, bro, where I had $500 in my bank account, and payroll was in like
Wow.
3 weeks, right? And it was so stressful, man. And then finally, just kind of, there was like a little sense of like a light bulb that went off that said, dude, check the change. Maybe they're sending the checks to them, And so I called them up, and then the lady said, yes, we made the address change. I'm like, dude, I'm not getting any checks. And they had moved to Africa to go do a church mission. So they weren't even home. So all these checks were being sent to this like empty house, man. And
Oh,
so then their son went over to go check, and sure enough, the checks were there. And so then so it was like amazing, right? So we ended up getting some of the money back, and it got us back on our feet. But like so that was some of the struggles in the beginning. Now the insurance game changes every day, right? And so you got to stay on top of that. And so I swear, like a couple times a year, you have to revamp your systems. You have to revamp the way you structure things, the way you run the business, because it changes every year, right? It's constantly changing. So you have to evolve, and it kind of sucks in a way, right? Because I know the care that I have to provide a patient to get them better, right? That part's easy. Like I can do that all day long. That changes a little bit with research, right? But changing the way you treat because of an insurance model sucks. You know what I mean? Because
Yes.
sometimes people can't get the care that you want to provide because one, financial issues, budget issues, right? Because insurance might not cover that, or they're only covering a little portion of it. And so it just really changes, right? So that's some of the stuff that we're learning, right? Like now that it's harder, it's about how can we provide the best care possible while utilizing the resources that they have, you know? And
Yeah.
I wish it was easy, you know, but like I said, the treatment part is easy for me, but figuring out the puzzle around everything to get them the right care, that's the hard part.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Are there anything in terms of patient care? Have there been any like major revelations or changes or just like changes to the industry norm in terms of the types of services or quality of service provided over, the since you became a chiropractor?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, like I said, things change all the time, man. And, you know, when I first started, right, like I had a really amazing mentor and professor who actually passed away about 3 years ago, which is pretty sad, you know, but he was amazing. He was very proponent on active care, right? Meaning, you know, like a lot of exercise, a lot of rehab, right? And back then, I mean, I'm talking 2010. So it wasn't that long
Yes.
ago, right? I mean, like if you really look at the grand scheme of things. And traditionally, chiropractic was very mobilized focused, right? Hey, or structure focused. Here's your spine. You know, let's get some x-rays. Let's paint some lines. Let's look and see where your restrictions are. Let's see where the dysfunctions are. And then you go after that, right? Which is good. You still want to do that, right? But we missed a lot of times on the function component of it, right? Like we can correct, we're really good at assessing and correcting the structure, but we lack a little bit on looking at the stability and mobility of the overall system. You know what I mean? So we're very driven on the joint. And so this professor really opened my eyes on like if you really want to make a change, it's not just about moving a joint, but it's really about assessing their function, right? And so as I came out of school, I got a whole bunch of different certifications on how to properly assess functional movement, how to properly assess weaknesses and dysfunctions, right? Not just the joint. And so the muscle side of it, right? Because in chiropractic, traditional chiro, you're just adjusting a joint, right? And that's what a lot of chiropractors, that's how it was back then. It's changing a lot, you know, so a lot of people are doing more and more. Um, but when I first came out, I was one of the few chiropractors in Spokane who started doing rehab, actually exercises. Actually, I would put money on it that I was the first chiropractor in Spokane that started doing rehab specific one on one with a patient. And most of them were doing general adjustments, and a few were doing soft tissue with it, right? And
Mm.
so for me, I really took that to heart and started doing one-on-ones with my patients. Started not only just moving the joint or moving the muscle, but adding that component of function and stability to that. And that's kind of what kind of started setting me apart. And that's the trend now, right? The new norm now, it is that it is functional assessment, functional movement, and then functional stability, right?
Mhm.
And performance. And that's where our profession is moving towards. That it's why, you know, a lot of professional teams now are going to chiropractors. You know, that's why USA Track has, you know, a sports chiropractor. You know, if you look at any NGB, USA Wrestling, USA Gymnastics, you know, all of those NGBs have a chiropractor on staff. NFL teams, MLB teams, MLS teams, right? All of them have a chiropractor because they're seeing how how important that is in the overall picture of performance for that athlete, right? And so we're in a very good position right now being a sports chiropractor in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. And how does that translate into the services that you provide at Summit Chiropractic? Because I've noticed, and I mean, anyone who's been to your facility even has noticed that there's a lot going on there. Some things that are really traditional chiropractic, some things that look more like they're on the rehabilitation or physical therapy side, and then some things that just, some people haven't even heard of, like functional cupping and cryotherapy or your altitude room, right?
Right.
So how does that all fit into, I guess, just the broader picture of what your chiropractic practice looks like?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So for me, right, I've always wanted to be different, right? The name Summit, it's there for a reason, right? It's not just because it sounds cool, right? But Summit really, for me, the meaning of Summit is you're always trying to reach that peak, right? Trying to reach the height, the highest point. And so for me, that includes treatment, that includes knowledge, that includes, you know, the proper care for a patient, right? The way we treat a patient. We always want to be the best at everything we do, right? And so in order to be the best, you have to provide the best forms of care for the patient. So one of the systems that I developed was that's like specific to us is our analyze, mobilize, stabilize, optimize phases in care. So every patient will go through those phases, and that's your patient journey, right? That's how we take you from the beginning to the end where we're releasing you, where you're back on the field, or whether that's back to run a marathon, right? Like you kind of did, right? Or we take you to playing with your grandkids, right? That's the same journey for them that's important than for you to run a marathon, right? Or for an Olympic athlete to get a gold medal. So these phases really paint uh, like a picture for them on what we need to do for them, and there's specific goals in each phase, and then that dictates the treatments that we provide a patient for specific goals, right? So for example, our analyze phase, right? Our analyze phase is to come up with the root cause of the issue. So what do we do in that phase? Well, we do a physical exam. We do a functional movement screen where we assess your mobility and your function. How well can you move and how well can you control that movement, right? And that's going to dictate my treatment for you. Like, what do we need to do to get you back to correct that mobility and to give you stability back, right? So then that leads us to the second phase, which is our mobilize phase. So in that mobilize phase is where we control pain and decrease inflammation, right? That's the whole purpose of that phase. So what do we do there? Well, we add the chiropractic manipulation for the joint to get movement back in the joint. Then we add functional cupping, like you mentioned, right? So what does the cupping do? Well, it brings blood flow in the area. We add movement to it so that we can get mobility in the fascial layer underneath, where we're getting some of the adhesions, right, of the restriction of the muscle. So then we add mobility to that cupping. So it brings blood flow to start the healing, and then we get movement. The muscle flossing, kind of similar, right? We compress it, we move it to bring blood flow and break up scar tissue. We add soft tissue instruments, right? Like Graston, where the fat tool, where we break up adhesions by grinding over certain areas, right? To get mobility back and to bring blood flow in the area. That's where we use our cryotherapy. If there's a lot of inflammation, the inflammation is great. You want inflammation, right? Because that's the beginning phases of healing. But when the inflammation lingers, it slows down the recovery. So that's if it's lingering, then we add the cryotherapy to be able to calm that inflammation down so that we can progress you, right? Excuse me. And so again, right, those services that we provide are for a specific reason, right? They're there for a reason. And then those specifically are there to give us movement so that we can control pain, right? So the pain is the first thing that's going to go away. That doesn't mean you're fixed. It just means you're moving better, right? And then you're able to move and control that the mobility in the muscle and in the joint. And so once we start giving you that movement, then we move into the third phase, which is our load phase, which is the stability phase, right? We stabilize it. And in that phase, right, we look at the functional movement assessment and look and see, okay, how well are they controlling that movement? And so we add specific exercises to correct the movement patterns that are dysfunction, And then we also look at the injury and then what we need to stabilize because of the injury that you have. So we'll correct the injury and we'll correct the pattern, the bad pattern movements that you're having. And then we merge those to give you better control, right? And then the optimized phase, right, is where we add the goal specific exercises to get you back to return to play, or the goal specific exercises to get you back to life, right? And so that's how we progress you. There's landmarks, there's goals, specific services that we offer to get you through each phase, right? And then you mentioned the altitude room, right? So the altitude room is awesome because there's only 2 in the country that are open up to the public. So we're one of 2. And in that room, we can actually manipulate the elevation of that room, right? So we can make it all the way from sea level to where we're at, all the way up to 20,000 feet of elevation. And so we do like sport specific training with teams. We do general classes for people who want to gain more lean muscle mass, or those who are trying to lose weight. Whatever your goals are, right? We try to work towards that through the altitude room. And the benefit of that is we're building up more red blood cells, right? So you're creating blood cells because of the lack of oxygen your body's able to absorb. Your body naturally goes into this hypoxic state where it tries to build more red blood cells, because your red blood cells are your taxi for for oxygen intake, right? So if let's say me and you go out in a race, right, here in Spokane, we live the same seat at the same level, right, the same altitude. Yes. So we'll have the same red blood cells. But then you have a guy who's been training in, let's say, in Colorado, right, and they're at a higher altitude. Well, naturally, because they need more red blood cells to absorb more oxygen so that they can be at their optimum, or just general health. They come down here, they have more red blood cells than me and you, so they're able to intake more oxygen. So they're going to be able to last longer. They'll have more endurance, faster recovery, because obviously, right, if you're using a lot of energy, your body needs that oxygen to recover, right? More blood flow to the muscles. And so just better all endurance and performance. That's why a lot of these elite athletes will travel and do altitude camps, right, to prepare for a race or for training. So for us, we have it in-house. So once they're done with their training and they're done through their treatment, we have a place for them that they can be pushed even more and join this fitness studio where they can optimize their performance even at a higher level by staying on top of like weekly classes, open gym at our facility, where they can be pushed at a higher level. Yeah. So we've basically created a place where not only are we taking care of your injuries, we're also giving you a place to stay in that system for increasing performance of whatever your goals are.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah.
And you obviously, if the listeners can't tell from this conversation, you're a very sport-focused institution. But at the same time, you're taking in people who are not athletes for general care. And obviously giving them the same quality of care too. What I'm kind of curious about with that is, as far as your patient base, your client base, are they mostly people who are in sports or not so much? Is it a mix? Or how does that pan out?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a mix, right? If I were to put a percentage on it, I would say it would be 70-30. I would say 70% of our patients are one form of an athlete, right, or another. We do get some referrals actually for like car accidents, like workers' comp, right? So we do get some of those referrals. And that is actually one of the reasons why they like us, is because we're not just going to adjust. We're actually going to take them through our phases, and they're going to get active care. They're going to get all this extra stuff, right? It's not just popping their joint, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the car accidents that we get referred, that is one of the reasons why they like us, right? Because they're involved in trauma, right? And so they need to get better. And so even though we treat other patients, we're still treating them like an athlete, and that's why we get those referrals. But if we're talking straight percentage, I would easily say 70-30, 70% athletes and 30% general care.
Yeah. And how do you go about marketing the the services that you provide. I mean, you've been in the space for a while, so I imagine you have a lot of old clientele that's coming back at this
Right.
point. But where are you at right now in terms of marketing efforts? I know you do some stuff on social media. I can find you on like Google My Business, but what's your approach to that?
So, I mean, I've done a lot of different marketing strategies, man, honestly, right? Like I've done, paid ads. I've done, hiring a marketing agency to run SEO for me. I've done a lot of that. Um, but honestly, like I'm not doing any of that right now. What I'm doing is, just being in the community, man. Like honestly, like you give back to the community, it comes back at you, and I've been a big proponent of that, right? Just serve our community and then it pays dividends. And uh, the majority of our referrals are patients, and our second referral source is providers, actually people that know us as the standard, right, of care for sports injuries. And then we get those referrals, and we still get some SEO stuff. People, wow, I found you online. We do get some of those. Is not the highest. The majority of our, I would say 75 to 80% of, I would say 75% of our patients are referral based from a patient. And then I would say another 15 would be probably providers, or 20 maybe. And then a very small percentage would be online. Yeah. So a lot of it is people are talking, right? They're sharing their experiences with us, with them, with their friends. And then that's how we stay busy. And on average we see about 60 to 70 patients a month, new patients. So it's so we stay busy, we stay fairly busy. um, but I would say I've built my practice based on volunteering and being out in the community and helping, do marathons, do triathlons, and working with USA Track. We work at the high school now, right? So we have the contract at Central Valley High School, so we provide the medical for them. And athletes get hurt, so they come into our office. That's a referral form, right? Like, we work at Eastern Washington University, so we get referrals from that. We work with the Spokane Sports Commission, so we do sporting events for them, and we get referrals from that, right? So it's just we're out there. My mission is to be the leading sports chiropractic clinic in Spokane. If you're thinking a sports injury, you're not thinking anywhere else but Summit, right? That's been my vision forever, right? And then that's what it turns into, right? Like that's what our mission has been, and that's where we get our referrals. Patients think injury, man, I need to go see Summit Chiropractic. It used to be Dr. Lopez, right? But there's only so much bandwidth and so much time for him in my day. So the team that we have follows the same model that I've created, right? And so we've uptrained, our providers and our staff, so that you're going to get a really good care if you come in to see me or the other doctor, right?
Mhm.
Or the other therapist, and so, but that's kind of the way I've built it. It's not about Dr. Lopez anymore. It's about the system, right? The system that we've provided, that we've built all these years, that's going to give you really good care, and so that's how we're able to see more patients, right? Because we have other providers that can take that on.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of serving the community, how did you first get involved with USA Track? For a lot of people who like follow you on Instagram, they're probably like, "Oh wow, this is this incredible thing." But I imagine it was probably quite a grind and probably took years of involvement and conversations and networking and demonstrating your skills as a sports chiropractor to get where you are now. What has that looked like?
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is, dude, right? Like, I mean, I get people asking right now, dude, how do I get to go to the Olympics? I'm like, man, like it's a grind, dude, just like you said, right? So it all started 2011. Like I was a year out of school. Actually, no, it was the same year I came out of school. Actually, it was about 8 months after I graduated, that the opportunity popped up. And how did it pop up? Volunteering. I would go online. I would go and say, Google, hey, what are the local 5Ks running events that are coming into town that I can go volunteer at, right? Go stretch people, whatever. I'll go throw garbages out. I don't care. I just want to get out there and just get my name out. And so I saw that there was going to be the Junior Olympics in town. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And when I went to go, it was USA Track and Field Junior Olympics. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's awesome. I need to contact the person. So I kept scrolling, and the lead contact was actually one of my patients. And I was like, oh, that's sick. So I called her up, and then I said, hey, I just started working, right? I just barely started working on your son. It was actually her son. It was her son. She wasn't my patient. It was her son. And so then she was like, actually, and I told her, I said, hey, how can I help? I'm use my hands, whatever you need to do, I'll do whatever, right? I just want to be involved, right? And then she was like, actually, Drew, like, our head medical director just stepped down, so we don't have anybody for the meet, and we need somebody. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, shoot, let's go. I got this, like, and so I'll help you guys out. So they're like, that would be awesome. So I helped them out, and then so there was going to be two meets back to back within 2 weeks of each other. And so on the first meet, I went in there and helped them out. They're like, hey, this was great. You did amazing, right? Like, we want you back for the next meet in 2 weeks. And they probably said that because I needed somebody anyways, but like, I always give it my all. So I was hoping that I did a good job, right? But so then after that, the next meet was 2,000 athletes. So that first meet was only 300. So for that second meet was going to be 2,000. I'm like, dude, how in the world am I going to do this? So I got the office involved where I was working at the time, right? So I was working at the other doctor's office. So we gathered some volunteers, and then we came up with a plan, and then and kind of led that, right? And so then right after, the president of our local USA Track Association. So there's different associations throughout the country that make up USA Track and Field, right? So we're in the region 13. That covers Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. And so all these athletes came from those three states. And the president was like, bro, like, we need to have you on our team. We need to have you on our staff. And then I said, okay, I'm down. I can help whatever you guys need me to do. And so they appointed me to be the chair of the sports science, sports medicine for the USA Track and Field in the Northwest Association. And so that was back in 2011. And to this day, I'm still the chair for that. And so I manage all of the local junior Olympics and for outdoor track and field, and then also for cross country in the winter. And so every year, USA Track and Field, all of these regions from the country come together, and then they go to meetings. It's called the annual meeting. And so then they fly out all these people, to go to this meeting, and then you go to your classes. So I just went to the sports science classes, right? And the sports medicine classes. And then you go there, you learn, and then you bring that back to your association. So when I got there was about 20 people in the room in all these classes that I had. And these were the head medical directors for all of USA Track for the national team. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's cool. So then, and I was nervous, bro. I'm not going to lie, I'm like, I don't know if I belong here. You know what I mean? I'm new out of school. I was nervous, right? And so then I would say after the second year, they were like, dude, we see you here every year. Who are you with, right? Because a lot of these associations don't send medical providers there. So I was one of two in the whole country that would get sent there. And so then they're like, we see you here every year. Like, why are you here? And I was like, well, I'm here to learn, like, and take what you guys teach me and apply it back home. And they're like, that's kind of cool. So you're working with the youth? And I'm like, yeah, like, I work with just youth. That's all I do, because we don't have a lot of elite athletes in Spokane, so I'm working just with high schoolers and middle schoolers, and elementary school kids. And then they were like, how would you like to get involved with more of a national level? And I said, that would be cool. So I started 2011. That was my first meeting. 2013, they got me to do a national meet. So this is where all the elite athletes come together, and they have a meet that day, that week. And whoever takes first and second place out of every event makes an international team to represent Team USA. And so I did that for 2 years, 2013, 2014. And then in 2015, because then they started inviting me to apply to do more meets. And so I got in their invitation list. And then 2015 was my first international team that I got invited to. And it was for the Junior Pan American Games in Canada. And then from that year, I've basically been asked to do a meet pretty much every year, an international meet. And then, so since then, I've done nationals, I've done Pan American Games, I've done indoor worlds, I've done outdoor worlds, and then this year, Olympic trials. And then this year, I get to go to the Olympics, which, it's been 2011, 2024. It didn't happen overnight, right? It was a grind, sacrifice for my practice, sacrifice for my family, right? Personal time, vacation time. My vacations were my trips. I couldn't afford to take more vacations. So there was like a stint of like 6 years, 7 years where I didn't even take a vacation. My vacation was going to on these teams, right?
Yeah.
To build my name up, And so yeah, man, it's been a grind, bro. It's been a grind. But that's kind of how I started, through volunteer work, service, and grinding, and then I'm here, right? So
yeah. And it's a lot. So my last question for you is, what motivates you to keep all of that going? I mean, what when you wake up in the morning, what are you like, okay, I'm going to go grind again today?
Yeah. Uh, I mean, like, I think in general, right, whether you're just doing sports or just general practice, right, you got to have a why, right? I mean, otherwise it would just be horrible, right? Like getting up every day, coming to work, my days in the office are 8 to 6, right? I mean, it's long days, man, and then, like I said, I'm going on these trips. They're long trips, right? So what motivates me, it's my whys, right? For me is I want to have financial freedom, right? Second is I want freedom with my family, more time with my family, right? And then I want to be able to provide for my staff and take care of my staff. And then I want to be able to serve in my church. And those are the 4 things that drive me every day, right? And everything that I do in between that every day, it's a part of the process to get me where I need to be. You know what I mean? And so like, I don't look at it like I have to go to work. It's I get to go to work. I get to go to work so that I can be better, right? So that I can provide, so that I can have freedom, right? And I think, like in any business, no matter what you do, you have to find that, right? You have to have a mission, you have to have a vision, you have to have core values that you live by, and you have to have your why. Once you have those things, man, like it makes your pathway more clear, and it gives you a reason to do the things that you do. Otherwise, it's just chaos, and then you're busy, you're doing all this stuff. Like, why do you do it? How do you do it, right? I do it because I have to, because I know where I'm going, right? And it doesn't become like a burden. It becomes something that I love. And when I'm out there grinding for like when I go to these teams, I'm there for a week, and your hours are 8 to 11 p.m. I'm working there harder than I am here, right? But I get a lot of energy from that because of the atmosphere, because I love it, right? I love what I do, I'm in the clinic. I love what I do. I'm there. I love what I do. So it's everything. I do it with a passion, right? I do it because I love it, right? It's not work for me. I get to do this. I get to help people. I get to help people, reach their goals their whole life that they're working for to get a medal, right? I have a small portion of that, right? They did all the work, but at least I have a little portion of that, right? My employees have a job. I have a little portion of that, right? Like, and so I think, like, I try to look at that, and then that's what motivates me, and it keeps me going, man.
Yeah. Wow. Well, all I can say to that, because there's a lot of wisdom there, and I think I'm too early in my journey to really add much onto it. But it sounds to me like if you decide one day you don't want to be a chiropractor, you could probably be a business professor somewhere. I could buy that. I'm feeling inspired, going down to WSU, Gonzaga, wherever you want. You can teach a couple classes, I'm pretty sure.
Hey,
So
no, man. I mean, like, I've had a lot of good mentors, I've had a lot of good mentors, and I have a business coach too, right? I mean, you have to take care of yourself, right? And like you said right now, I would have to disagree with you in a way where you're too young in your career. This is the best time. Like
Yeah.
you can't wait more. Like if you establish a clear pathway to where you want to be, then I wish I had this knowledge when I first started, right? Because then it paints the pathway. I would have gotten maybe been more successful, right? Earlier on if I had this clear pathway, right? So don't think of it as like, oh, I'm too early. No, this is the best time for you. Best time. You're already doing it. I mean, we're doing this, right? Who else is doing this? Not a lot of people, right? Like, so you're differentiating yourself from other people, and that's what it's about, right? Honing in to your craft and what you're passionate about, and then you just have to establish those guidelines for you really early on so that you can move towards that. And like I said, I don't attribute a lot of the stuff that I'm telling you, it's help that I've gotten from mentors, right? From different people. I mean, right now I have to attribute a lot of it to one of my coaches right now. His name is Dr. Frogley. He's amazing, and he has taught me so much on how to establish these visions, these core values, right? How to establishing my why, like why do I do what I do, right? And am I perfect at it? Heck no, bro. Like I'm far away from it, right? But if you make one or two changes every day, right, it's moving you in the right direction, right? And he's an amazing a mentor, but he's very fast paced too, right? And I got to keep up with them, and but like I said, he would wish I would go move faster probably if he was hearing this, but
Yeah.
the for me the biggest thing is that I'm moving forward. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to move in the right direction, right? And that's all that we can ask, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Summit Chiropractic is active on social media and they post some great content, in my opinion, especially on Instagram. So if you want to follow them, you can find them on Instagram and YouTube, and it's just at Summit Sports Chiro. If you're in the Spokane Coeur d'Alene area too, and you want to check out their services, or just go grind away in their altitude room, you can find them at summitsportschiro.com. If you or your Washington or California based business is in need of legal services, you can find my services by going to www.longhair.lawyer. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you can. Until next time.